Considering that they're leaking profusely, and I happen to have them off of the bike, we're going to replace the fork seals on this 1980 Suzuki GS1000G right now. So in order to service these things, the best thing to do is get the top clamp loose by doing that while it's in the bike first. It's always recommended, because that way you get a nice solid clamp, you can get a wrench on there, get it loose. Now I've already gotten this one loose, so we're going to go ahead and move on. These traditional forks are usually pretty easy to do. You're going to start with just getting this dust cap off. Grab a flat blade screwdriver, just pry it out, and grab just a regular flat blade. You can pull that back and off of there quite easily. And then the next thing you gotta do is you gotta get the little snap ring out of there. Totally gross. Now don't scratch the chrome on that thing. You do not want to mess with the chrome on the fork tube. Yeah, these things are rusty. This is a 22 millimeter on this cap here. So a 22 millimeter end wrench, and like I said, I already had it loosened, so I'm going to do it right up so nothing drains out of there. We got our cap, we'll pull out our spacer. You may have to compress the fork just a bit to get the spacer out, and that's okay. Press it a little more, you'll see the spring and a washer or a fitting that goes on the top of the spring there. And then you can pull out the spring nice and easy. And hopefully don't drain any fork oil everywhere. There isn't much oil left in this fork, if I remember correctly, if any, to be honest with you. And give it a few pumps. You want to pump it back and forth. Get all the valving empty. Yeah, there's nothing in here. It's mostly all over the brakes, which is why we're doing this. Give it a few good up and downs, and then you're going to want to basically just set it aside for a good 20 minutes and, you know, prop it up in there, lean it up against something, and just let it sit there for a good 20-30 minutes and let it drain completely. Our goal is to get this entire thing completely dry of any oil at all. So, I mean, because if there's any residual oil in there, then it's gonna mix with the new oil. And I mean, our whole goal here is to make it all fresh and clean. There it goes. If you have one of these tools, it's a spark plug wrench, mostly found in a lot of toolkits. This thing will fit directly down into the place that it needs to grab hold, so you can get the bottom bolt out. Get it to sit in that bad boy like that. Drop an extension with a 14 millimeter socket on the end, and you can hold on to that sucker while you get it up. Now that you've got this bolt out of the bottom here, you can slide the entire fork tube completely off. Just you can get in there and you can get your fork seal out a lot easier. And of course, while you have everything out and you're starting to take everything apart, it's a great idea to go ahead and get everything dried up, get all the dripping oil off, clean it up, inspect everything right now while you've got this apart. But we'll set it aside for now. We'll go ahead and drop all of our cartridge out and spring for that. Okay. Now I'm going to inspect down this tube real good. I'm going to look at the bushing, make sure there's really no issues down here with the bushing. Just kind of get a glance, dry it up down there, get a look. And then I'm going to flip this sucker upside down like this, and I'm going to let it sit on a rag right there until I'm ready to use it again, because that'll allow it to just kind of clean all of itself out. And in the meantime, I'm going to probably do the same thing with this, but I want to first get my old seal out. I'm using a rag over part of that. Use a channel lock and just get right up underneath there. And luckily this channel lock actually fits right on the other side of the seal itself, so it's not even pushing on the aluminum, and you can just kind of start to work it out and it'll come. Okay, they didn't want these to come out at all, but with a lot of work and a little patience, they're starting to move. There we go. Alright. You just need to get it over the hump, man. I've gone ahead and cleaned up my fork tubes and our stanchion here. You're also going to want to make sure you go ahead and clean up everything as far as the spring, all of that's concerned. Just give it a good once over with your rag. Get all of that residual oil off of there. Any of the internal parts to the forks, just wipe them up, get any of that old oil off of them. And once you've got everything cleaned up and you know which way it goes, these are super simple forks, so there's not really a lot to them. But there's our old seals, and we're going to pop our new seals in here from Owl Bowls Racing. That seal, obviously, going to go right in there. So you are basically, there's no washer that goes in here. It's just a fit with the seal itself. And we're going to use a little grease on this just to get it to help slide in there a little easier. Just a little film of grease on the outside surface of the seal, help it slip into the fork tube a little better. Get our seal up in there. Almost slipped right into place just doing that. And they do make drivers for these, which is always recommended. So I'm using a 30mm socket to press the seal down into place. And once it's all the way down and fit, you're pretty good to go. And she is nice and seated. All make sure your snap ring's all the way in, and you're good to go. And now another little film of grease just on the inside of that fork tube. I'm going to start with the damper rod, and that's going to go straight into your fork tube here, just like that. Let it come all the way down and come out the bottom, because you're going to want this bad boy right there. We've installed our seal, and I got some grease on the seal. Just make sure that it goes in nice and easy. And we put it all the way down to the bottom. And I felt it touch the bottom there, so I'm going to actually hold on to it for a second and grab the bolt, just see if I could actually get the bolt to thread in a little bit, which would be really spectacular if I could just get it to do that. Even a little, and even the slightest bit, just helps everything hang on, so that if you do have to flip the fork upside down, it's not going to fall out on you. So it looks like I got a decent little bite on it. So you can give it a tug and just make sure. And I do. So we'll go ahead and get the rest of it put together now. Now that that's in, I can go ahead and tighten this up. Impact wrenches on motorcycles are bad. The only time you should use an impact is to get a bolt off. Never put anything on with an impact on a motorcycle. Alright. Looks clean. There's no rust or anything on the tubes. And we'll go ahead and put everything back in now. Looks clean. There's no rust or anything on the tubes. And we'll go ahead and put everything back in now. And remember, this spring is directional. It's got taper at the bottom. You're going to want to put the tight stuff at the top, the tighter wrap spring part at the top, the more spread out section at the bottom, and it is a little bit tapered at the bottom too. And you'll go ahead and slide our spring back in and pull the tube up a little bit. Grab our cap. These forks in the manual call for a 10W20 weight oil. Because of the weight of this bike, I'm going to go with a little bit heavier fork oil. We're going to go with a 15 weight. After doing some research and asking a few people that have had this bike, that's what they've kind of recommended. So we're going to go with this. As far as fork levels, you're going to need some way to measure your fork oil, and you're going to also need a fork to pour it in. 241 milliliters of fork oil per fork is what your capacity is, and what your aim is. It's 225, 40, 30. We'll go a little higher on that. We'll call that close enough. After you get the fork oil in there, you're going to want to move that thing up and down, get that cartridge moving a little bit. You'll start to hear all the air bubbles leave, and the damping will start to work the way it should. So give it about 10, maybe 15 up down strokes, and then call it good. Once you can feel that there's no air pockets or any bubbles making noise, you're pretty good. You'll probably hear some fluid running through the damper rods, but you won't hear too much. And then I like to grab a rag, and I had a little grease on there, so I clear any residual stuff off of there. We want to measure the height. Remember, we're looking for 140 millimeters from the top of the tube here down to the level of the oil. Measuring down from the top of the tube, you're going to just lay that right there. Pick it up, you should see, oh, I'm perfect. It should barely be touching the oil. Now, we can go ahead and throw the cap back on there. Screw it. Just screw it. At this point, you'll have either changed or inspected the O-ring. Make sure that it's good to go. Voila. We'll tighten that up all the way when it's clamped into the triple. Follow the procedures and do the other fork, and we'll go ahead and put these bad boys on. And there we have it. Forks are back in there, ready to rock and roll. Well guys, I hope that helped you out with those fork seals. As you can see, I've got them back on the bike. If you like what you see and you do like the channel, hit subscribe. I got 2 videos a week coming out on this bad boy. Have a great one. We'll talk to you next time.